Om Shri Sai Ram. Shri Satya Sai Baba and the Naranarayana Gufa Ashram. Chapter 3. The Rare Creeper, the Two Wise Men. In the previous chapters, it was already said that the Lord had given 11 of his followers an Akshaya Patra on their journey to the Himalayas, and that they had found a huge cave at the mountain of Naranarayana, where they have since lived a life of meditation and lead asceticism. It was also said that Bhagavan manifests himself there as and when it pleases him to guide them along the path of spiritual discipline. The discovery of Soma creeper and other medicinal herbs. An important task in the Naranarayana ashram is to ensure that there are enough pieces of firewood in stock to sustain the Agnihotra fire. For that purpose, the cave dwellers go out once a month to gather wood. However, since the ashram is at an altitude of 5,500 meters above the tree line, they have to make descent of 6 to 9 kilometers before they reach forests or trees. Although this may seem quite simple to an outsider, such a company entails a lot of risks. However, when you are convinced that God is with you, nothing is impossible. Something wonderful also happened, namely the discovery of a very rare medicinal herb, the creeping plant Soma, alias Somalata. In Vedic times, offerings and fire ceremonies could only be accomplished if a Soma creeper was available. For only the sacrificed sap of this plant could deities like Indra please that they were willing to give their gifts in the form of an abundant grain harvest, wealth, and all other matters that are mattered. The Shastras also refer to the Soma creeper and in particular to its miraculous rejuvenation property. This not only removes all ailments but also gives old, decrepit people back their youth. In our day, many will think that rejuvenation is just a figment. I would like to refer them to the fact that between 1940 and 1950, the Venerable Sri Swami Vishnudasa, 108 years old, Tapasvi led about 10 known persons through such a rejuvenation process. He also underwent the treatment himself and reached the age of 185. The cure received extensive publicity in various American, English, and other European newspapers and was then considered the eighth wonder of the world. Still, the success was only due to the systematic and methodical use of the Soma creeper. The Vedas in particular mentioned the Murban mountain as the place where the Soma creeper once grew luxuriantly. As the Aryans spread over the east and south of India over time, their bond with the Soma plant loosened. They gradually lost the once close contact with the God, and with it the divine gifts of nature became more and more scarce. The Satya Yuga merged into the Treta Yuga, the Treta Yuga into the Dwapara Yuga into the Kali Yuga. And by then, the divine plants were nowhere to be found. The Somalata was no exception. That is why in the Iron Age, that is Kali Yuga, people used Putiklatha, another medicinal creeper for the sacrifices. It occurs in some certain parts of Vindhya mountains located in central India. However, compared to Somalata, this creeper is of an inferior quality. But as is undoubtedly known, everything divine can never perish. Even though we see something of it only when it appears on the surface, once it disappears again, we assume it has been lost. In reality, all of this remains potentially present in the universe, but only accessible to those who dare the adventure and continue to search diligently. It remains inaccessible to someone with impure intentions. However, as soon as man frees himself from the bonds of materialistic desires and purifies his heart, these plants become available again and can be obtained through genuine effort. This eternal natural law also revealed itself to the God seekers from the Naranarayana Ashram. To collect small twigs of firewood, they had to make their way through the wilderness. On one such occasion, they saw a strange plant at some distance. When they approached, they recognized her. It was that rare and divine creeper, the Somalata. Two members of the group are very well versed in both Ayurveda like medicine. They had no trouble identifying the plant and were deeply moved by this discovery. The creeper was then brought to the ashram under the ceremonial chant of Vedic mantras and hymns. In Indian culture, herbs and medicines are never considered as inanimate matter, but treated with great respect since they are treated by the gods of nature, are blessed and have a divine germ in them. Hence, we must observe the prescribed rituals when bringing herbs from the wilderness. The next time Swami reappeared, they showed him the plant and he confirmed it was the Soma creeper. However, it was only due to the grace of Bhagavan Sai Baba that they could have found this divine medicinal plant. Without this grace, it would have been impossible to get such a powerful remedy in this age of decay. Later, the Lord planted the Somalata herself in a suitable place near the ashram, and it is very possible that she will spread there in the near future. Approximately equally felt Sadhaka's yet another miraculous and divine herb. When the juice from the leaves is dripped into the eyes, the person in question develops unusual vision. It allows him to see in the deepest darkness as well as during the day. This way, they discovered even more valuable herbs. Two wise men. God comes to earth for the good of all mankind. Everyone receives the blessing of his presence, whether he is rich or poor, big or small, involved in secular affairs or detached from them, whether he has family or has withdrawn from the world. Yet it is curious that those who have renounced the world and lead a reclusive life generally have little direct contact with Bhagavan Baba. It is therefore appropriate to say something about two sadhaka here, who did get that contact. They both belong to the group of 11 who live in the Gufa Ashram. Sri Swami Vamadeva Maharaj, 108 years. Swami Vamadeva is 104 years old. In 1986, his desire to become sannyasin arose from an enormous urge to acquire the four main virtues, and as is known, one is only entitled to live the life of a sannyasin if these virtues are reflected in his lifestyle. Swami Vamadeva was lucky as he was endowed with all these virtues when he withdrew from the world. However, it is common that even an advanced sannyasi who possesses all these virtues cannot resist the temptation to gather around a group of followers and build an ashram of brick buildings, solid and expensive. Swami Vamadeva deserves our respect because instead of taking others as a disciple, he wanted to master his own thinking and senses. He had made an effort all his life for this. After all, experience shows that you perish when you cannot control your thoughts, but also that you will certainly triumph when you master them. Since the whole universe is at the disposal of the one who controls his thinking and senses. In other words, a person who submits to his capricious mind is wasting both his life here on earth and that in the hereafter. But someone who knows how to submit his mind to himself and to enslave it improves his chances in both the worlds. Here on the earth, he gains name and fame, in the other, liberation. This was what Swami Vamadeva achieved, but also that you will certainly triumph when you master these, since the entire universe is at the disposal of the one who controls his thinking and senses. Swami Vamadeva's view of the ashram life is also quite unusual. According to him, we should consider our own body as a true ashram, as it provides us with the shelter during our search for God and our aspiration to merge with God. So our human body hides the seeker of truth of God. All other ashrams are essentially of no use. If you have no followers nor a building complex like an ashram, the question of wealth and prosperity will not be addressed, nor will you attach yourself to any external form. This automatically leads to a sense of detachment, which grows over time. 20 years ago, he was 85 years. At that time, Swami Vamadeva noticed that his body became weaker as the years passed and that he became subject to all kinds of ailments. He wondered if the time had not come to voluntarily give up his body. He belonged to the Avadhutas, who, after the example of Rishabhadeva, voluntarily give up their physical body. When the forest where Rishabhadeva was absorbed in meditation caught fire, and the fire burnt every tree, bush, and plant to ashes, it sacrificed its mortal body to that fire and acquired thereby divine bliss. Swami Vamadeva decided to attain liberation by the same tradition to follow and thought, why not go to Kashi and the abode of Lord Shiva himself, where the holy waters of Ganges will wash away all our sins and give us the state of liberation. With this plan in mind, he went to Kashi, and while meditating on Lord Shiva, he jumped into the Ganges. At that moment, something wonderful happened. Although Swamiji on the ashes decorated, he saw the face of Lord Shiva whom he meditated. He saw suddenly a divine person in a saffron-colored robe with a crown of hair on the head, raising his hand in a gesture of blessing and protection. It was visible for only a few minutes and then disappeared. But something wonderful happened at the same time. When the philosopher entered the Ganges, he first disappeared deep under the water, but the next moment his body reappeared and floated effortlessly with the stream like a tree trunk. After the body traveled a few hundred meters in this way, a third miracle happened. A tremendous wave rose from the calm waters of the Ganges, which carried his body to the bank of the river and then ebbed away. The next moment, the river was completely calm and still again. Swami Vamadeva was then determined to leave the place where Mother Ganges had left him. He said to himself, "Here I stay in the lotus position meditating. When the Ganges floods in the rainy season, I will automatically be taken away. Once I have bestowed my own body to Lord Shiva and the Mother Ganges resting on his crown, it needs to have no further protection. I leave it to them to decide whether or not to take care of it." That same night, the playful Lord SAI gave one of his followers, a somewhat older army officer, a strange dream. He saw in it that Bhagavan pulled a sannyasi like a small child on his lap. His whole face spoke of a great motherly love for the childish sage. In the dream, Sai Baba's follower was overwhelmed with a feeling of love and reverence. He thought to himself how lucky that sannyasi is. Lord Sai treats him like an innocent child and single-handedly ladoos him. How happy I would have been if I could catch a glimpse of this holy man. After all, the seers have said, rather give your friendship to someone devoted to God than to the Lord himself. For although God will bring you wealth and prosperity, the devotee can give you access to God himself. In other words, you can only reach God by associating with good, high-quality people. That is why this follower of Baba prayed with folded hands in his dream, "O Lord Sai, let me be fortunate to catch a glimpse of this beloved saint. My life will certainly gain significance if I have the opportunity to serve such an advanced soul." The following evening, the officer took a stroll along the banks of the Ganges, and he had barely traveled 100 yards when he saw the saint from his dream sitting in lotus position and engrossed in meditation. Overwhelmed with joy, the man sprawled at his feet. He began to thank Bhagavan Baba with folded hands. Swami Vamadeva was greatly surprised and said, I have never seen you and I don't know your Sai Baba either. As far as I know, we have never met before or otherwise know each other. Why then that unnecessary tribute? Could you be imagining something?" Sai Baba's follower then told him the dream he had and concluded his story with, "I beg Bhagavan Sai Baba to see you and also to give me the opportunity to serve you. Isn't it a happy coincidence that my prayer was answered so soon? It's not enough for me to meet you now. Therefore, I kindly request you to accompany me to my modest home and give me the opportunity to serve you for some time." Thus, Swami Vamadeva came into contact with Bhagavan Baba through the dream of his devotee. Bhagavan often plays a wonderful game with his devotees, for suddenly a memory flashed through the memory of that divine appearance that had shown him when he meditated on Lord Shiva before diving into the Ganges. The description given by Sai Baba's devotee was completely in line with that. Would that Sai Baba then be the incarnation of Lord Shiva, he wondered, when he heard an inner voice say, "Yes." However, Swamiji had a problem now and he explained to the man, "You should know that as an Avaduta sannyasin, I am used to living in the forest. I cannot accept the hospitality of someone like you who has a family." He replied, "Swamiji, I am very familiar with your way of life and will make sure that your stay is a place you will like. In connection with this, one may also consider the following happy coincidence as Leela of Bhagavan Baba. On the bank of the river Manikarnika Ghat is a piece of land where the dead are cremated. Here resides a number of sannyasis who have committed themselves to Lord Shiva. They meditate on Lord Shiva as the protector of all living entities, and one of them had died a day before this meeting, so that his shelter was vacated. The Manikarnika cremation site in Varanasi is very popular with the ascetics. Day and night, a pyre is kindled somewhere, which reinforces their sense of detachment and convinces them of the futility of earthly existence. The devotee passed on all this information to the Swami and suggested that he move into the vacated place. Swami Vamadeva accepted his proposal with both hands. The Swami spent some time in the hut near the incineration site. There he had the opportunity to learn more about Bhagavan Baba through the stories of Sai Baba's followers, the photos and the description of Baba's miracles. At a good time, he became so moved by love and by intense longing for Bhagavan's darshan, he is convinced that he could no longer restrain himself and finally joined a group that would later found the Naranarayana Ashram. Together they went to Whitefield to receive Bhagavan's blessing. He became one of the 11 people chosen by Baba himself to be sent to the Himalayas. Thus a holy man who lived in a spirit of total detachment came into contact with the Lord incarnated here on earth. Sri 108 Swami Virajanandaji Maharaj. Swami Virajananda is just like Swami Vamadeva, a sannyasi of very high order. He is a great scholar and completely detached from the world. Although 100 years old, he is still fit enough to take long journeys. For a long time, he had led a hermit existence at Dashashwamedha Ghat in Kashi, on the other bank of the Ganges. Being a virtuous and intelligent man, well versed in scriptures, yet humble and unpretentious, he has had many followers over the years who have purified and substantiated their lives under his guidance. About 25 years ago, he heard about Baba's divine incarnation, and in 1970 he visited Puttaparthi with about 20 followers, where he spent 20 days. Usually, Bhagavan's Leelas are inscrutable. Sometimes they are so peculiar that the greatest seers and sages are misled by them. In Hindu mythology, there are also countless examples of this. Take, for example, Sati, the consort of Lord Shiva, who doubted Rama's divinity as it passed through the forest and tested him against the advice of Shiva himself. And did not the great philosopher Narada became very angry when he noticed that Narayana had given him the appearance of a monkey, after which he married the beautiful princess Vishwamohini, so desired by Narada? Well, something similar happened to Swami Virajananda. After spending 20 days in Prasanthi Nilayam, he came to a conclusion that if Baba was already a God-man, he apparently was only for foreigners and wealthy people. An incarnation of God would still be the embodiment of love and should not distinguish between rich and poor. We have been here for 20 days now, and all the while he has not even bothered to ask us who we are and where we come from. No, he cannot possibly be that embodied love. In this conviction, he asked his followers to leave the place immediately and return to North India. The first night they spent somewhere in Dharmavaram, a town 40 kilometers from Puttaparthi. They had 2 rooms, one for the Swami, the other for his followers and servants. When darkness fell, someone came to his door and asked, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" The Swami nodded affirmatively and a stranger entered the room. He greeted the ascetic politely and explained, "Swamiji, Bhagavan Baba sent me to you the kind request to go with me to Puttaparthi right now. May I request that you prepare?" His proposal fell into disgrace, and the Swami replied in a disparaging tone, "No, I do not do that. He may be the god of the rich, but he is definitely not ours. He claims to be the embodiment of love, but he certainly is not, because kindness and love are far from him." However, the visitor repeated his request, this time with a little more emphasis. "Maharaj, I have been sent out with this message and will not leave here unless you accompany me. There is a car outside with which I will also bring you back." After they had exchanged a few words, the Swami finally decided to go with the man, with the thought, "After all, I can be back here in about 2.5 hours." As soon as Swami Virajananda reached Prasanthi Nilayam, Bhagavan had him taken to his upstairs room. The moment he entered the room and wanted to shoot a stream of complaints at Baba, he smiled and said gently, "Let's eat something first, then you can ask me as many questions as you like." Served immediately, and after dinner, the Swami sat down opposite Lord, upon which Baba opened his right hand and showed him his palm. The Swami had barely glanced at it before he became terribly nervous and began to sweat. His face was filled with shock and awe. There was nothing left to ask about him. The Swami saw in Bhagavan's palm both his own shelter and his great crowd of followers. In doing so, he heard Bhagavan clearly say, "Love, love, love." What is love? Do you really think it is a sign of true love when you leave 5 to 7 family members and then gather around 1,000 other people around you? You may have left your parental home, but now you are constantly worried about building a few mud huts that can serve as an ashram. Your self-realization, the very purpose of this existence, has been completely overshadowed. You are currently more interested in your followers and in those houses. That's not love, but attachment. Not lust, but love is the essence of life. The word love should only be used in connection with devotion and love for God, and not in connection with desire and temporary fame. This was the experience of a lifetime for Swami. No one had ever spoken to him about spiritual matters like this, nor exposed the hypocrisy that we are so often victims of when we are spiritually engaged. For the first time in his life, he was told the bitter truth by none other than Bhagavan himself. In this way, he saw God in the form of Baba, God in the form of a man, the divine in human form. The Swami immediately fell to the feet of Lord and humbly tempted with a mantra to be initiated. However, the Lord replied, "Mantras are only given to a true student." In other words, to someone who has completely surrendered himself to God's will. Bhagavan thus made it clear to the Swami that he was more interested in his followers and his ashram than in the search for his true self and his own liberation. What use then was it any spiritual teaching? The ascetic took this hint to heart and humbly asked permission to leave. Bhagavan smiled and said, "Just a moment longer." When Swami Virajananda sat down again, for a moment he felt sleepy, and when he was wide awake again, he was in his room in Dharmavaram instead of Puttaparthi. The Swami was very much surprised. How was it possible that he had covered 40 kilometers of distance in less than a second without taking a single step? Pondering this, he immediately found himself in spirit again at the lotus feet of the Lord, and that memory alone brought him blessing. For at that moment, he also remembered what the Upanishads say about the characteristics of an avatar. The Lord is one who walks without using his feet, hears without using his ears, and tastes everything without using his mouth. Moreover, he is a great speaker without using his tongue and a realized seer. So everything he does looks like a miracle. He is one whose glory is beyond any description. Just as Bhagavan himself travels over land and sea without moving, so he can, if necessary, make the impossible possible for those who may enjoy his grace. The Swami therefore concluded that everything that had happened was only due to God's exceptional grace. He considered that Sri Satya Sai Baba was God himself beyond any doubt. When he returned to Kashi, he called all his followers together and candidly said, "In my utter ignorance, I made you my followers and called you myself a Guru. But in reality, only God is the true Guru. We can therefore be lucky that Brahman, the creator and the maintainer of and destroyer of this universe, has descended on earth in the form of Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. Therefore, let us all, you and I, only accept him as our one and only Guru." Then he broke all ties with his followers and his ashram and went on to live a strict ascetic life. His simplicity and fiery devotion did not go unnoticed. Since in 1982, Bhagavan called him to Prasanthanilayam and also appointed him as a member of the group sent to found the Gufa Ashram. It is good to see that other ascetics who have chosen the path of surrender and who live as sannyasin have come to recognize SAI's incarnation. In 1987, a Sadhu Samaj Sammelan of the state of Andhra Pradesh was held in Prasanthanilayam. Before many sadhus, sannyasin and scholars of great repute, Sri 108 Swami Bhumananda Saraswati, who at that time presided over the Sadhu Samaj, as well as his two predecessors, acknowledged the descent of God on earth in the person of Sri Satya Sai Baba. We hope that other states will follow suit as well. This concludes the chapter. Om Shri Sai Ram. Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram.